Hello and welcome to a special episode of Coffee with Chuck. All episodes of Coffee with Chuck are special, but this one is really cool because we're just coming off of our JAG K Day at the Capitol. We had an awesome day, great speakers, the governor, lieutenant governor, legislative leadership, and we had two really special presentations. And one of them was about the Brown versus Board of Education court case and also the National Historic Site that is right here in Topeka, Kansas. And so my background is actually the former Monroe Elementary School in Topeka, which is now the historic site, the Brown versus Board of Education historic site. And we had Ranger Dexter Armstrong spend about an hour with us. Actually, he was with us more, but the presentation was about an hour, and it was amazing. We talked about the court case. We talked about separate but equal and what that looked like in different states. And even though Kansas wasn't doing it well, Kansas was actually doing a better job than many states. And I wish we could talk about that today because that was wonderful. But we can't give it justice, and it deserves an appropriate amount of time to talk about that. But maybe we can talk about the historic side and how we can visit when it eventually opens and things like that. But I'm super pumped that we have Ranger Dexter Armstrong with us today on Coffee with Chuck. And I really want to kind of do a deep dive into his career because this is his fifth, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but this is his fifth national park that he has served at. And he's not a native of Topeka. He's from Charlotte, North Carolina, if I recall. And I just, welcome to Coffee with Chuck. We really appreciate your being here, especially on really short notice since we just met a few days ago. But just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you ultimately got here to Topeka, what the journey was like. Tell us about growing up in Charlotte and maybe some challenges you faced, why you decided to embark upon this career. Just tell us the whole story, like your autobiography.
I see. Well, first and foremost, man, thank you for having me as well today, as well as, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday it was. That's how close it has been as far as the first time we met, and here we are again right here today filming this. So, man, thank you for having me then as well as now. To unpackage, man, the load of questions that you just hit me with, and what I'll do is I'll keep it basic. So that you can continue to ask questions so that everybody knows what question I'm answering specifically. So we'll start right at the end, but at the beginning of what I'll tell you about, man. So like I said, Dexter Armstrong, from Charlotte, North Carolina, originally born and raised right there in the city limits, Mecklenburg County. So not at outskirts like your Cabarrus County or Concord, right there in Mecklenburg County, man. Grew up there, ended up going to college outside of North Carolina, as you mentioned, Tuskegee University, where I definitely represent most places I go out. And I say most places just because at times it's too hot to have on sweatshirts and hoodies and things like that. But even then, I have short sleeve shirts to represent it as well. I've had younger people, older people come up on me, literally being in restaurants that I remember actually going back home. Went to a restaurant, my mother and a friend was with us, and a guy came up on me and just like legit just walked up on me, looked me on the face. He said, "What you know about that?" As far as my t-shirt on or my sweatshirt on. And I very calmly, because I was looking at my phone at the time, and very calmly looked up at him and I said, "Man, I got my 4 years in and I earned my stripes to have this on." So with that, got to go to Tuskegee University, HBCU, so Historically Black College University. Loved every moment of it. Majored in animal science, actually. So a lot of people hear animal science and then think about what I do. Believe it or not, this is the only park being Brown v. Board of Education National Historic Site that I've worked at, that my degree doesn't necessarily translate to what it is that I'm doing specifically. However, as the ultimate job-wise, it certainly does. Animal science, you can go into so many different avenues and things like that. But for me personally, wanted to do vet school, wanted to become a vet. Ended up doing my animal science, graduated, had the opportunity to work back home in Charlotte, North Carolina at an animal hospital. Loved it, loved the people. But much like I revealed to your students, for me personally, when it comes to being in that vet world, man, it gets to a point of becoming repetitive. And that's not saying anything bad about it, but you're doing your yearlies, you're doing your vaccines, you're doing your dentals, all kind of things like that. And I can't sit here and say say that I enjoyed getting hissed at, barked at, growled at, administering some of those things, or assisting with some of those kind of things. And also, as I mentioned to your students, it's one of the unfortunate parts, but you have to kind of remove yourself from the real world within that profession itself, just due to some of the hardships that come with it, such as euthanasia that comes about with dogs, and they go through that, and we as humans have to make that call and that decision, but somebody has to be there to assist with it, and that usually was me. And on that moment, talking about crying and things, you got to hold yourself together. But had the opportunity to go to the Great Smoky Mountains while being at Tuskegee University, got to work there, got to see what this entire thing was about. The reason I went was it served as a plan B for plan A for my college experience. So as mentioned, wanted to be a vet, but they told you, and they will continue to tell people, yeah, everybody within this program will not make it to vet school. So you might want to have a plan B. So while in college, started that plan B, thought about it, got to go to the Smoky Mountains, loved every single day of it, to the point where I did 3 months at a time there, which is considered being a seasonal. Did 3 months, left, came back, knocked it out of the park. And I basically is like, man, this is fun. This is actually fun that I'm doing. Then the vet world still started happening, but continued to reflect back to my park ranger experience. So with that, I continued to apply for positions, get turned down, all that kind of stuff. And then I caught my break at Theodore Roosevelt National Park up in North Dakota. And that was 26 hours away from home, probably the longest drive I've ever done in my life. Would not recommend it. It's not that fun, but definitely a great experience. But that was that moment once I got there, enjoyed that season there as well. And that was that moment, that switch happened of no longer a plan B. This is what I want to do. So from there, to continue to talk about what parks I've been in. I've worked in 5, as you mentioned, 5 national park sites, and we're talking about sites. The National Park Service is the umbrella. Within that umbrella, or underneath that umbrella, there are different extensions of the National Park site system, National Park Service system. So you have national parks, national historic sites, battlefields, seashores, monuments, all of them. They're about over 420 right about now. And if you just listen to the back end of the name, it'll tell you what it is. So the national park is just the federal park, but it'll tell you if it's a national park that incorporates animals, wildlife, scenery, things like that. National historic site, there's something historic about the site. Monuments is something historic about the monument, or this is some type of monument. So after North Dakota, got to the chance and opportunity to go back home to North Carolina, worked in Cape Hatteras National Seashore, where they had the highest lighthouse in North America, standing at 197.5 feet tall, if I'm not mistaken. Got to leave from there, came to Brown v. Board as a seasonal, though I'm permanent now. That just means I don't have to leave. But then at that time, I was seasonal. Finished up season, went to Denali National Park and Preserve in Alaska, where I loved every single day of that, and continue to come back and forth between the two. So that's my resume regarding my National Park Service experience in the 5 parks I've worked at, where I've grown up at, born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina, if I have to say so myself, best city and state in the world. And then my college experience at Tuskegee University, yet again, still the best HBCU out there.
Can we go back? And I want to talk about a couple of these things a little bit more in depth. But when you were working on your plan B,
Mhm.
and I think you said Smoky Mountains, uh,
Yeah.
was that a program through Tuskegee University? Was that a national park program that you learned about when you were a student at Tuskegee? How did how did that opportunity avail itself? And are there similar opportunities throughout the country?
For sure, for sure. So how even the process of getting into the Smoky Mountains happened actually began, as you mentioned, at Tuskegee University, had an advisor. So knowing your advisors are some of the best things that you can do. That, if anything, I would say best start of networking. What a lot of people in professional settings discuss networking, building people around you, that because you're not going to know everything. So people surrounding yourself with people that have knowledge of these kind of things and letting them do their jobs is some of the best kind of information I can essentially give to high school students. But advisor called, happened to say, I need somebody to go to California. There's a program that's going on. And myself, my roommate, and someone else that I knew at that moment all said, "Hey, we'll go." First question for me is, "Do I have to pay for it?" But with that, went to, I think it was the 6th annual recruitment for the National Park Service at that time. They flew us out to California. And in that moment, and recently, as in like the last 2 years of being here, I actually got to speak to that advisor that got me in the program, and I was completely oblivious behind what was going on. And I say that because the 6th annual recruitment thing was a diversity program. However, that specific program and those individuals that were there matched what was at my school. So you had a bunch of people of color within that area or within that program, which looked like my school. So it didn't translate to me that this was a diversity program because everybody looked much like me or some people of color. Um, so in that program, they provided other advisors and things like that that spoke about other jobs and park service sites and things like that. The person that was given to me essentially spoke about the Smoky Mountains being close to home, this and that. So once I got back, continued to reach out to him, but at times the communication wasn't there at times. So basically kind of scooted him away and continued to make connections myself. And was afforded that opportunity through other people within the region that the Smoky Mountains was in to kind of touch bases with that, see if we can get certain things hooked up, and eventually was able to do that. And as you mentioned, does the Park Service have different opportunities like that? Absolutely. I don't know if that annual recruitment thing is going on still. However, you have recent graduates, you have high school students, you have different programs that stem or partner with the National Park Service. So you have the Youth Greening Program, you have Student Conservation Association, which is SCA, all kind of things, HBCUIs, which is historically Black College University interns, all kind of different programs that work hand in hand with the National Park Service, getting young people or college grads opportunities to get within the National Park Service compared to having to go against the entire country.
And do all of the positions, well, so a certain percentage of our students will go on to a traditional 4-year college university. Some of them may choose a 2-year path, and some may not want to go that route at all. Are most of the opportunities with the Park Service requiring a 4-year degree? Are there opportunities for folks who don't have a degree, or can you speak to that?
Absolutely, man. So first and foremost, I'll break down, as you're saying, positions. So if I were to compare it to anything, this is usually what I utilize. If you were to go into Best Buy right now, you don't care who you see within Best Buy, as long as their shirt says Best Buy, you're going to ask them where is something, where something at. However, if you know how the system in Best Buy works, you would essentially know who to ask. And I'm saying that because, for instance, people that have the Geek Squad shirt on, they work for Geek Squad. If they have on the yellow shirt, it could be the person at the front door, which is the asset protection people, or it can be a stalker. If they have on a blue shirt, they're a salesperson. So same kind of thing in the National Park Service. We basically all wear the same uniform, or you at least see this emblem right here. But based off of our position and based what we have on at times, we could have different positions. So it usually is broken down into kind of 5 categories. You have maintenance, or the maintenance crew. Those are the individuals that, for instance, behind your picture right here, or within your picture, the people that keeps that grass amazing, the outside of the building, they build certain things, all that kind of stuff, even the waysides, which are the resources in which you can read outside, that is all maintenance. They keep up the integrity of the site that you're seeing and make sure it is as pristine as possible. So you have maintenance. You have resource management. They manage the resource, your biologists, your wildlife techs, your wildlife specialists, things like that, your scientists. You have your resource protection. That's your law enforcement, those individuals that typically have guns, handcuffs, things like that. They're the ones that are making sure the resource stays protected, and typically are the ones that's going to say, hey, if you're not going to do this, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a ticket. We're going to give you a fine. You have administration. So people like your I guess you'll say your administrators. So your superintendents, your supervisors, your AOs, which is your administrative officers, so your banks and stuff like that, people that handle paperwork. And then you have your interpretation, your park rangers, which is what my position is. So those are the people that are bringing significance to whatever you're seeing, making it relevant and bringing it back to life, all that kind of stuff. So we're talking about the degree part of it. There are certain positions that you might need a specific degree, much like your resource management. It's kind of hard to be a park biologist without having a biology degree. So that's your specialized kind of things. Maintenance, depending on what kind of position you want to be in, you might want to have that 2-year degree that what is it called? Not traditional. Basically, when you're having those little skills, those skills, your plumber, your whatever.
Like a trade, or like a
yeah,
trade.
there we go. Trade school. There's my thoughts. Yes, sir. Trade school. But depending on what position you want to be in, if you want to be the lead something, it might make you look a little better to have that degree. Even in my position, my degree is in animal science. As you can see, I'm at a historic site. I've worked with people with art degrees in my job. My supervisor in North Dakota was an architect. She had buildings in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and stopped being an architect to be a park ranger. So it just depends on what position you want to be in. Some people I've worked with that have no degrees. However, what I'll say is, depending on what you come in with, it places you where you can where you're going to be, essentially. So you have positions that require no degrees. However, you're going to typically start at the bottom and have to work your way up. If you come in with a degree, depending on what degree you come with, you might start here and have to work your way up. Whereas, and so I think it's like associates, bachelor's, master's. So literally, it'll do just like that. I think your associates might start at a GS4 because we're on a GS scale. GS4, bachelor's GS5, master's GS7, or something like that, depending on where you're at. So your degree places you within your rank, and then you can continue to move up from there. Okay, but it just depends on what position you're in.
Okay. And I wanted to go back to something else you talked about in being in a program with people that looked like you. One of the things that really struck me was the photo you showed us when you were at Denali. And there were about 200 people in this photo, and you asked, "Can you find me?" And I thought it was fairly easy to find you because you were the only Black person in the photo. I think there may have been 2 other people, maybe of color, that I don't remember if an Asian
that's right.
lady, and I don't remember if it was Native American. I don't remember the other.
Yep, it was Asian, and there was another Black individual, but he was one of the in the program that I just mentioned, SCA. So he wasn't a full, like an actual employee. He was an intern.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was the only person in green within that picture or any other Black person in that picture in green and gray.
Okay. And so, is that fairly common? Was it just at that park? I mean, is that because we talk about opportunities, equity, and those types of things. So it just so tell me about opportunities for people of color within the National Park Service.
Absolutely, absolutely. So opportunity is what I'll say is just like most jobs throughout the country, equal opportunity employer type of thing. So it's not that it's kept away from Black individuals
Sure.
because you're a color, people of color, you can't work here type of thing. So it's nothing like that. But what I will say is in my own experience, I didn't know about the Park Service until my junior year of college. Hence the story that I told you about my supervisor, my advisor saying something about it. And even then, even to the point of talking about the 6th annual recruitment, the recruitment part went out the window. Once I asked that question of, do I have to pay for it? And she told me no. We could have been learning about basket weaving. We could have been going out there to cut grass for all I cared. It was my first time ever on a plane, first time to California, and I didn't have to pay for it. Sign me up. Why are we still talking type thing? So absolutely. So it wasn't until my junior year, and even when I go back home now, two things occur. One of which I still don't see any kind of signs of the National Park Service. And if I do, it's the subtle ones, the Find Your Park, National Park symbol in the corner, and that's it. And it's like, okay, what is that? Type thing. And one of the downfalls about that is the National Park Service, as you probably have already noticed, you've never seen a national park commercial ever, because that's something we can't do. We can't advertise for the National Park Service. So you might see things that partner with us, like Subaru. You might see things like that. But if you ever look at the bottom, it'll say the National Park Service Foundation, not the National Park Service. So those are partners of the national. So there's different things around that kind of stuff. So with that, a lot of people don't know we exist. And even when I go home, or depending on who I'm talking to, where I'm talking to, most people of color, they'll ask me, what do I do? And I'll say, I'm a park ranger. I work for the National Park Service. Most people's response, and this is typically how I know you don't know about what I do or what this is, oh, that's cool. Literally to the point at where I ask them, do you even know what that means? Like, do you even know what I do? Nope, it just sounds cool. All right, cool, it sounds good. So that is, and this literally just happened recently. Literally, I told my girlfriend's brother, I told my girlfriend's brother what I did, and he was just like, oh, cool. And I literally just, yep, you don't know what that is, do you? Nope, I figured you don't have it right. So no worries there. But with that, opportunities, absolutely. There are opportunities. However, if I don't know the place exists, I don't know what opportunities are there. So that's why certain things come about, like your internships, volunteering, things like that, to start early. So it kind of puts the seed in the head to know that this is out here. Much like having this conversation, there's some people that live in Topeka, Kansas, that had no clue about the National Park Service being in their backyard, or they'll know that the school or the building is there. However, they don't know who owns it and what it is. They'll say, oh yeah, I know about that site. But most people don't know it's the National Park Service, because when most people think about the National Park Service, they think just about the natural sites, because they just hear, oh, you're going to a national park. And that's why you keep hearing me say the National Park Service. So it takes care of the umbrella, and then we'll be able to break down. It's just like me saying I work for emergency services or the military. You're not going to automatically, like, both of those are broken down in categories. The emergency service, are you an EMT? Do you work for the police? Do you work for firefighters or military? Are you Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine? You see, same kind of concepts, same kind of thing. The National Park Service. Oh, what kind of park do you work in? What site? I work in a national park. I work in a national historic site, battlefield, seashore, whatever it may be. So yes, opportunities.
And I would guess that a lot of people wouldn't even think Kansas has any national park service
Man,
facilities, but we have multiple. How many do we have in Kansas? Five?
five, exactly. So you have our sites, so Brown v. Board of Education National Historic Site, Nicodemus National Historic Site, Fort Scott, Fort Larned, and Tallgrass Prairie National Preserve.
And I have not been to Nicodemus. I have been to four of the five. So I mean,
Man,
there are a
and
lot
with
of
that,
things like that.
all of them are free. Yeah,
And
all of them are free.
are all of them closed right now? The Tallgrass Prairie has some buildings there, but are they all closed right now because of COVID?
So I couldn't answer that and I
Oh,
say it that way just because obviously different parks are doing different things. So let's use Tallgrass Prairie as an example. Their buildings might be closed, but there's more to do at their site, even though their buildings are closed. Whereas in comparison, ours, even though our grounds are open, there's nothing to do on our grounds. So you might as well say the site. You see what I'm saying? So it
yeah.
just depends, and the ownership is different there as well. So it comes with and all kind of uh, politics, I guess you'll say.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
When you started your first site and then you moved, is that how does the rotation work? Is it like a tour of duty? Is it just that you want to go somewhere and you put your bid in? How does that work?
For sure, for sure. Great question. So what I'll say is yes, but no. Yes to the point of tour of duty, and I say it that way just because the National Park Service historically at one time was ran by the Army. So we follow some of the same kind of terminology. Uniform looks kind of militant, all that kind of stuff, but it's still not a part of the military. So tour of duty. So even on my paperwork, he'll say tour of duty, such and such, duty station. But it doesn't work like the military that way. It's just the terminology. So a lot of people think we are stationed places. That's not how it works. If you're a seasonal person, typically that means you're either in college or you just don't want a full-time or permanent job. So seasonals typically work from about 3 months to 6 months, depending on what the season is. But once you finish, so let's say my season was, I don't know, I won't even put it in 6 months. Let's say my last day is February 26th, meaning today, right? Means tomorrow I am unemployed. The National Park Service, they don't send us anywhere. Essentially, what it boils down to is you are no longer a federal employee at this time. What you choose to do is completely on you. You can apply for another National Park Service site. You do have to apply for it. Just because you've worked at Brown v. Board doesn't mean I can call Nicodemus. They're going to say, congratulations, you need to apply just like everybody else. You can go apply for another National Park Service job. You can tour the country. You can go back home, whatever you may want to do. But essentially, that is on you. Thank you for your service. You're no longer employed here. Whereas in a permanent ranger, what that means is you have a start date and you leave whenever you choose. So for me personally, I've been here about 3.5 years. I have someone else on my team that's been here 20 years. The head person of our maintenance staff who keeps our facility and our grounds taken care of and our facility looking pristine. She has been there since 95, to the point where seeing that grass being cut up and geothermal stuff being put under the ground. So she has seen a lot. And I think she's, I guess that's about 25 years there. So yeah.
So she's been with the Park Service for 25 years, or because this has been a historic site since 2004, I
For
believe.
sure.
So
So what
how
I'll
did
say, it's been open as a historic site since 2004.
I'm sorry, say that again.
So no worries, no worries. It's been open since 2004. So here's
Okay.
what I'll share. So the site, if I'm not mistaken, was purchased in 91. Begin renovations in 93, all that kind of stuff. And I think it might even be 93, or it's 93 or
Okay.
95, one of those times when she came in. But the old site of Brown v. Board, I'm not sure if too many people know, and this yet again is a piece of history for Topeka. If you've ever been to the downtown post office. On the third floor, that's where this site used to be housed. And I'm pointing at my site, but like this is my house, where our site used to be housed. And even talking about the name, Brown v. Board of Education, that's just the name. National Historic Site. That means in order for that to be considered a National Historic Site, there has to be something historic about the site. The post office is where the court case at a local level was actually argued.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that
So
makes
yeah, so
that all
yeah,
makes sense.
so she was one of the first employees. She was one of the first employees, and I think she was hired. And I think this is her only part. Whereas for me, as I was mentioning, I've been here 3.5 years permanently, but that's not including the 2 years and 10 months I did within those 5 parks.
Okay. And if you wanted to go to the Central High Historic Site in Little Rock, you would just have to apply like everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But I assume based on your experience and if they had an opening, that you would probably be a pretty strong candidate for the position.
Yes, I'll say I'll be a strong candidate, but it doesn't guarantee me. And I say it that way because you have other people. So there's different, much like how I'm saying SCA and internships and things like that, so I don't have to compete. There are things that kind of can be weighed against me, which is fine. So for instance, people that have military preference or veterans preference, people that have served in the military get higher preference. So there's certain programs and such like that help individuals out. So there's no guarantee of getting a, but yes, it will make me a strong candidate. And one last thing I wanted to, or not one thing, step back to the seasonal part of it. As I mentioned, once your duty is over, they no longer send you anywhere. They don't send you anywhere. But that also means you have to get home too. So for instance, going to Alaska, yeah, that came out of my pocket. So that $370 ticket one way to get to Alaska came out of my pocket. Once you get to the airport, you have to ride a train to get to the park. That's $100 out of my pocket. Then I have to come home. That's $370 back, right? $100 back to or the train. Then I got home and then essentially came back here to Topeka. That's a 15-hour drive back here. You got to find your own place depending on where you're at. Some seasonal places, such as Denali, like I said at the meeting the other day, there were 200 seasonal rangers. As a site that brings in that many people, yeah, you might want to have some seasonal housing. Whereas a small park like Brown v. Board, they were only bringing in one person. So as the federal government, yeah, I'm not going to purchase a house or some kind of seasonal housing for it only to be up for 6 months out of the year. So that means you have to find your own housing. That comes out of my pocket. So when it comes to the seasonal life and opportunity and things like that with people, it's not a glamorous look because when you're thinking about being a college student or whatever it may be, yeah, I got to have money to get there first and foremost. So that means almost you got to save up to being a park ranger, and depending on where you're going, 26 hours away from home in a car, anything can happen. So I mean, you have to be able to accommodate those kind of things, pay for stuff while you're there, and get yourself back home.
What has been the most enjoyable part of just being a ranger, but then specifically to the Brown versus Board of Education historic site?
Yeah, man, one of the most exciting things. Let's see, man. There's so many. Like legit, I can give it to you from so many, or with all my parks. But I will say is probably the visitor interactions, man. And I say that because those mean the most to me. And though it has nothing to do with Brown v. Board, or even the National Park Service, just putting it into, or excuse me, a park place, even just being there with your students. If I'm not mistaken, the gentleman's name was Bryce. Is that who introduced me? Does that name sound
From
familiar?
Great Bend, yes.
Man, absolutely. just the way he introduced me. And that's from conversation, visitor interaction, right? I said, man, you know, he said I was going to introduce me. I said, man, cool, sounds good. You set the scene. I told him that. I said, you set the scene, man. Get everybody hype. I want people chanting, all that kind of stuff, playing around, all that. I was like, I want music, all the whole shebang. Then he saw me when I was getting prepared. That 2 minutes prior to, I like to go in the restroom, kind of separate myself, go to the restroom, say a little prayer, come out, listen to my music, and get myself in the zone. He literally came up to me and was like, man, how about this kind of music? And I told him, I was like, here's what I'm listening to. So, you know, do your thing, because I wasn't expecting him to do what he did. And then he got up there and started playing music and introduced me. You know how many people I've done a told that already to? So things like that help out with the interactions. But so visitor interaction, that kind of stuff. I have stories from 2011 when I first started working in the Smoky Mountains, to the point, and I'll keep this story brief, where met a 2-year-old. I talked to her for 2 hours in a program that it wasn't my program. I just was there because I was supporting my teammates. Went on a night hike and all this other kind of stuff. She talked to me. I learned about her dog, Famous Amos, that barked a lot. I learned about her mom being pregnant, and she wanted to call her baby brother Mashed Potatoes, the whole shebang. With that interaction, like I said, 2 hours worth of talking, met the next day, interacted with her. I left the Smoky Mountains because my season was over, came back the following year, as I mentioned, did 2 seasons there, happened to be walking in the campgrounds, and a gentleman came up in front of me and said, hey, man, I remember that sound like it was yesterday. And I'm like, man, what's going on? Had no clue who this gentleman was, just like sitting there talking to him. And he was like, hey, Mackenzie, do you remember who this is? And I promise you, just like a movie, the gentleman was standing here and I was standing in front of him. So I'm here, he's here. He was like, hey, Mackenzie, do you remember who this is? And scooted out the way. And it was that little girl. Back another year, 3 years old. Man, got to finally meet mom, because at that time it was just her and dad walking on the night hike. And the way the conversation started is because she was up on her dad's shoulders and I told her to get down. My legs hurt too, and she's been up there the whole time. That's what started the conversation. But got to meet mom finally, got to learn that they got rid of Famous Amos and got a new dog. Got to see the brother Mashed Potatoes who got born, all that kind of stuff. So those kind of interactions, man, they stick with you for a lifetime. So interactions as a whole. And then at Brown v. Board, man, when you have moments, yet again, it's going to stem to the visitor. When you have moments where you have a light bulb moment of, I didn't know that, or get to engage in diabolical conversations regarding race and something as heavy as that, but they leave with an angst to want to do, or feeling as though that they've learned something, that is phenomenal. As well as when you get to literally see and thank history. When you get to have moments when Catherine Carper Sawyer, which is the only young girl that testified in the court case at a Topeka level, when she walks in your building and you get to say thank you, my God. When you get to see a 1949 picture with matter of fact, the young lady that, I don't know if you recall, someone in the program was like, there's a white person in the actual picture. And I said, she's actually albino. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned it and I said, man, she's still living, right? When you get to meet people like that and see them actually in real life, man, it can be anybody that comes into that building with titles and all that kind of stuff. We've had, what are they called? People from different countries and leaders. Phenomenal. Thank you for coming, happening. See, when they walk through the door, my heart starts beating fast. You just ask questions and honestly be quiet and let them talk. So when you have those kind of moments, man, it is phenomenal. So those are my two most exciting things.
So conversely, what are some of the challenges with working at a national historic site, a national park, working for the National Park Service?
Absolutely, man.
Every job is perfect. So
not at all. So challenges, and let me ask you this: challenges regarding getting into the job itself? Personally, what do you mean?
Actually, if you have time, we have time to hear both. I was talking about just on the job, but I think, and you've touched on this a little bit, but what are some of the biggest challenges of even getting hired? But I
Yeah,
meant
for
just maybe
sure.
it's hours, or if you're out in Alaska, maybe there are other challenges.
For
But just
sure.
what have you encountered? And you don't
For
have
sure.
to.
So what I'll say is we'll start with some of the in the job, like in the sense of getting hired and stuff like that. It's really hard, and I say that just because it's a competitive field. When you have thousands of people applying for jobs, literally, um, it is kind of hard to look good. I'm not gonna lie to you. So when it comes to volunteering and interning, those are some of the best ways to get federal experience, because if you don't, essentially you're going against someone like me that would eat you alive on paper. You might come in doing a phenomenal job. But when you have a degree and I got 5 parks under my belt and you don't, I'm about to eat you alive. Even if you bring in 120%, the smartest mind out there. So those kind of things can not have an impact on one's confidence. And I say that just because when you start getting denial after denial after denial, that thing comes in your mind of, let me just stop. Whereas you shouldn't. At the beginning of my career, I was not, you can't be picky with coming in with no experience, essentially is what I'm getting at. So when you apply for these jobs on usajobs.gov, you apply to just about any National Park Service job, or like park ranger, if that's what you want to do. Apply to them all, to the point where I think I applied to 150 different ones one summer or one year. And I'm saying it that way just because you cannot be brought on unless they're hiring. So in the instance, if you're trying to work a summer season, you don't wait until whenever the summer comes, July, to start applying. Yeah, those applications come out in December, January, because that's how long the process is. However, they're only open for X amount of days. So that the cert, which is called, so the application might hit the streets, hit the internet for let's say December 26th. It stays open for 5 days. Meaning if you miss it on January 1st, guess we'll see you next year. That's how it goes for government jobs. So you have to keep your eyes on the actual computer, essentially, and having someone whisper in your ear, hey, did you apply for this? Set up your account where it pings you, whatever help you can get, because it is a tough job to land. And in the bigger parks, it's even harder because everybody knows Yellowstone. Everybody knows the Statue of Liberty. Everybody wants to go to Alaska. The good thing about those places, they bring in 30 plus seasonal rangers. So you have a chance. But when you have a smaller park like Brown v. Board, Nicodemus National Historic Site, places like that, yeah, you might have 100 people apply, but they got one position. And you're coming in with no experience against someone like me. See how that makes it harder. So volunteering, all that kind of stuff, all that can lead up to you getting experience on your resume. And a federal resume is different from a regular resume. They want all the information you have. So my federal resume, I think, is 15 pages, not including the reference page, not including that, not a cover page, 15 pages solid of information and job stuff that I have had. So that's on the hiring side of things. In the sense of in the job, I'll go Brown and the entirety. Quality of life is a real thing. So as you're saying, hey, working in Alaska might be hard. What comes, it depends on the individual. So for instance, for me personally, and I'll speak to I'll say Black men just in general, or Black people, I'll say it that way. If you don't know how to cut your hair, which I don't, being in Alaska, there's 2 hours from the park to the main city. 2 hours. That means it's a 4-hour day just to go get a haircut. And with that, personally, I have waves in my hair, so liking to keep that, but at the same time, because I didn't know how often, because I didn't have a car up there, go against the grain, cut the waves out. So quality of life things like that. If you're a Black woman and like to get your hair done and can't do it yourself, with there being a lack of diversity in some of these rural places, at the end of the day, my hair chuck is different from your hair. So if you come to me with some scissors, yeah, you got the wrong idea. So with that same kind of concept for hair, unless you don't mind it being a fro, unless you don't mind it being messed up, which essentially you don't want, because if you're in a position like mine, you're in the face of public all day. So your image is everything with that, and you're representing the National Park Service, so you can't look crazy. So quality of life, it depends on you and what you can take. If you have a family, all those kind of things. So that those challenges come with the individual. One challenge that I have within my job here at Brown v. Board, and it's going to take a brief turn for just a moment, and then we can come back to questions. It gets tiring. And I say that because not the hours, none of that, the conversation. For 8 hours as a Black individual or a person of color in general, I have to sit in that building and sit in that history of people that look like me, and having those inequities and bad things and horrible things be done to them just because of the color of their skin. 8 hours, I sit there and I listen to, there's a display in there called the Hall of Courage, where people are yelling derogatory terms at Black individuals. And one gentleman in that specific exhibit says, "We will not mix with a bunch of Black savages." That thing plays all day, just so you know. And I had to hear that. I had to converse with individuals that might be to the point of, I'm preaching to the choir. They're like, man, I'm all for, let's have these kind of conversations. But then you might talk to people that are not up for learning the song. Hey, this is crap. I don't want to hear this. I don't believe in any of this. Racism doesn't exist. You all need to stop complaining. All things I've heard. Y'all are ungrateful. I will never date anybody that looks like you because y'all beat women. All kind of things I've heard before. For 8 hours, right? And then I had to take off that uniform and still live in this country that still is not right for people that look like me. Where's my break? So when it comes to that kind of stuff, you have to be okay and not no. You can be not all right, but you have to figure out how to hold that in or let it out in a way that is good, compared to having outbursts and ready to fight people. Will I sit here and say it's not hard? Absolutely not, because it is tough. You have moments where you just sit there and listen. You have moments in which you just like, yeah, I don't know if I can do this anymore. So you have all kind of moments like that, but that's at my site specifically. However, when you go to places like the natural parks, such as Denali, the Great Smoky Mountains, though I am probably the only person there that looks like me, it's not the conversation at hand. There's a conversation that may be had, but it's not my entire 8 hours. And then last thing I'll say with that is the thought process of people saying that a picture is worth a million words. Usually I was that picture causing the million words, because when you have a Black individual in uniform and then you got that one or two Black individuals walking by, they're like, I know that's not a Black Ranger. Let me take a picture of you so I can show it to my grandson, my nephew, my cousins, so they can see that this is something that they can do. So with that kind of pressure added, hey, it's a weight that I already have on my back automatically. The weight of the world was there. Why not a few extra pounds? So it's those kind of things as well.
And this may not be fair to ask, but you don't have to answer it. I mean, you love Topeka, you want to stay here. You mentioned a girlfriend. Is there a dream job within the National Park Service that you would like to do? I mean, what, or have you even thought beyond, today's coffee with Chuck?
Yeah, definitely have thought about it. What I'll say, career opportunities and advancements are there. So it depends on what's coming up and go from there. All kind of things. So I don't want to just marry myself to Topeka, Kansas. Dream job, I don't know. And I say that from a personal background from that. When it comes to, I'll say historically speaking, traveling, it costs money. Historically speaking, we know that white individuals have the money, so they have the option to travel, right? So usually these kind of things are passed down as a tradition. Let's go on a road trip every year. Let's do, and not to say black people don't travel, but you historically speaking, you see more white individuals travel. So unfortunately, I have nothing to reflect to, and we went to Yosemite. I cannot remember going to New York and saying, "Hey, I've seen the Statue of Liberty," because I haven't. Um, so to think that, like, man, so usually most things like that stem, and people in these jobs, like, will say, I remember when I used to go hiking with my family, which kind of influenced me to do. Yeah, talking about hiking and things like that. I camped in my living room with my mom. So, like I told your students the other day, coming from Charlotte, I could tell you all about sirens. I can tell you all about loud noises, big buildings, to the point where I told them, y'all are gonna have to talk because it makes me nervous when y'all get quiet, because that's where I'm from. So yeah, I can't have any, I don't have any memory or recollection of saying, man, I want to go there because so not yet.
So I want to give you ample time to plug your alma mater. Why did you decide to go to Tuskegee University? I think most of us have probably heard of the Tuskegee Airmen, and um, I don't know if
Sure.
people know Booker T. Washington founded the university. It wasn't Tuskegee University when he founded it, but anyway, founded the institution. Why did you
Institute.
decide to go there?
Yep. Man, perfect. So what I'll say is, it's not going to be an elaborate story. I can't sit here and say, man, I knew it was an HBCU. I was a fan of Booker T. Washington. None of that. I couldn't. First one out of my family in the sense of going to a university. My mom went to a 2-year college. My dad went to a 2-year college. Siblings out of the youngest, one of the youngest. None of them went. So I can't say I wanted to go to an HBCU like them. I applied to college because I knew that's what the next step was. My mom told me, hey, I don't know where you want to go. Don't worry about the money. Just apply to college. So I applied to North Carolina State, hoping to get in, or no, where was it? Yeah, NC State is what it's called, NC State,
Sure.
to help kind of like stake money and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, didn't get in. Applied to Tuskegee, got in. So guess what? That's where I went. So I don't have any moment of like, oh yeah, it was HBCU. Honestly, I had no clue it was an HBCU. I didn't know what an HBCU was, because when it comes to these kind of things, when I don't have anyone to, and this sounds like an excuse, however, it's real life. Asking about college and stuff like that, who am I asking? You see what I'm saying? My mom, my dad didn't go to a university. My siblings, I think I have a cousin that went, but she went right there in Charlotte, which is fine. It was a university as well, but I wanted to get out of Charlotte. So I don't necessarily have anybody to ask. Guidance counselors will tell you, but they also got a school full of students. So things like that. Got in, accepted, got money. I even remember to the point where and I just told this story the other day. I remember someone told me that if you get an envelope, just an envelope, more than likely it's not an acceptance letter. They're saying, hey, we're sorry you didn't get in. But if you get a package, that's the golden ticket. I remember walking into my room. I think I had just got home from work while I was in school, in high school, working a job. Saw the package my mom had left on my pillow. Man, like when I say the excitement, like I was like, let's test this theory. Opened it, read it. I'm yelling like crazy because I remember like a commercial saying, man, I think it's a North Carolina commercial. It's like, I am going to college, to college, to college. I am going to have that moment. Like jumping up and down, yelling, my mom congratulating, all that kind of stuff. And by that time, I think it was time to go somewhere. Going somewhere. Got in the car and literally hadn't even made it out of the neighborhood, thinking about it, like, man, I'm going to college, all that. Man, I started crying. Not joy. The thought of, I know where I came from. I know I'm from Charlotte. I know I'm in a single parent home. I know my mom has troubles paying bills. And now I'm about to go to a college that costs $28,000 a year. Yeah, how am I going to pay for this? Yeah, that was a real thought. How am I going to pay for this? And my mom told me, don't you worry about it. We'll get you in there. We'll figure it out. So to stand before you or to sit before you and say, man, college graduate, that within itself is amazing. But then to say I come from the illustrious Tuskegee University, man, phenomenal. Loved every day of it. First year or first semester, that moment, of let down by your state schools and all that kind of stuff. And I say let down, but just not getting accepted. You're like, man, if they call, I'll go. Man, wouldn't change it for the world. Wouldn't change it for the world. The interactions, the relationships, the conversations, the classes, the work, even though it's not amazing when it comes to doing schoolwork is schoolwork. It's all the same. That wasn't that fun. But even learning from those kind of moments and the shaping of things that happen, man, it's phenomenal. And even when you get to see other HBCU graduates, even to the point of when I was there with your class, I told those students and the people that was in there, I was in Tuskegee University or graduated from there. And I don't know if you heard the young lady I was standing up, so she was to my left, to your right. She was like, hey, I was like, oh, HBCU grad? She's like, almost 1 year. Because when you hear that moment of that, it's almost like a love-hate relationship. It's like a sibling rivalry. You're going to John each other. You're going to talk junk about each other, but it's all love and no one else better come in saying something about it. So for instance, I go to Tuskegee. If somebody went to Howard, Hampton, and we're going back and forth and somebody like, man, that school does suck. Who are you? Wait a minute. I thought yeah, who cares? You ain't about to talk about them. Like, so it's those kind of moments. Yeah. So yeah, loved every single day of it. And like I said, I would recommend it to anyone. But more than anything with college, I would recommend two things. HBCU is on the list, but it's not in my first two. Go to college. That's the first thing. Go to college, wherever you want to go. Second, my recommendation is go away from home. And I say that because it teaches you things. Teaches you, and it doesn't allow you to use things as a crutch, I guess you'll say. It teaches you things like money management. If you're close to home and you only got $20, you don't have to worry about what you're going to eat for that late night snack because you can go home and get it. You can go home for Thanksgiving dinner. You got to wash your clothes, go home. So there's pros to it. The con is you don't learn how to manage your money. Whereas, and if you are away from home and you got $20, but there's a party and then there's this, there's that. Yeah, man, I got $20. I know I got a test coming up Thursday. I know I'm going to be hungry studying Tuesday and Wednesday. So that's already $10 right there. The party is $10, but I got to also wash clothes and I got a lot of clothes. That's $5. So I can't go to, you're thinking, that's just one thing. You learn how to cook, all those kind of things. So go away from home and then I'll plug in those HBCUs, phenomenal experienced teachers, and you get to remove some of those kind of things, that some of that burden or that weight that I was just talking about. When you have people that look just like you in some of those sites and things, you don't get to use that thought process of, oh, they don't like me because I'm Black or because I'm whatever. Now your grades just suck. Get them up, study. That's on you. Whereas in other places, that isolation from being at other universities where people don't look like you can have an influence of you doing bad on your tests and your grades.
I'm glad you said that because that makes a lot of sense to me, and I hadn't ever thought about that. So just finally, what opportunities would there be for volunteering, or maybe even, I don't know if you would allow someone to job shadow you for a day. Are there opportunities like that for students at the Brown v. Board of Education site when it opens?
I was about to say that, man. So honestly, I'm also not only just the park ranger there, I'm also the volunteer coordinator as well there. So there's different hats that I wear within that site. So yes, opportunities. However, what I'll say, man, because our site is so small, at times we have to find the opportunities. So I wouldn't need 7 volunteers to help sort through our library and things like that. Maybe 1. You see, so it just depends on the day because our site's so small. Whereas in 7 is a small number for a place like Yellowstone or your Grand Tetons or Statue of Liberty, things like that. Probably even Gettysburg. It depends on what we have, but yes, volunteer opportunities are afforded. All they have to do is reach out to me. So my name is Dexter Armstrong. You can email me, you can call me. I even say my email address, Dexter_Armstrong at NPS, as in National Park Service.gov. Email me, let me know you saw this volunteer opportunity, and we can engage from there. As far as the shadowing opportunity, what I will say is I'm not sure. And I say it that way because more than likely they would have to sign up as a volunteer. And I say this just from the government side of things. If anything in that building were to happen to them and they're just walking around, roaming around, they're going to be just treated like a regular visitor, which would be anybody, just like you're walking around at Walmart. But if you're there shadowing and gaining the opportunity, you might want to have some kind of level of protection just in case you slip and fall down the steps that you would have never had access to unless you were on the job. So things like that. But even with that, it could possibly be an opportunity to reach out. All that takes is for me personally, to see if that happens, email, a call, or a walk down to my superintendent's office to find out what can be done. More than likely, she'll send it up the chain and we'll find an answer. So please don't be afraid to do that. The only thing I'll say with that, it can only be a certain amount at a time. I can't do a group of 15 people shadow.
Sure. Right. Well, but it wouldn't be because of lack of energy. You could do it, but it might be unwieldy with the size.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Just the size wise. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Well, and Ranger Dexter
Armstrong, to ask questions.
Pardon me?
I said, and feel free to continue to ask questions. I know we started a little late, so I think we got probably about 7 minutes of grace time in there, if I'm not mistaken. But that's up to you.
Well, I wish we had. So let's just, we won't talk about the court case, but let's just talk about the site itself. When someone goes to the historic site, they walk in the front doors and they see 2 signs. And I know you had a story about that, and maybe we don't have time for that story, but what are some other things that they're going to see when they go to the site? Because Absolutely. It is, I mean, it's is it back to the 1920s? What era is this set in?
Absolutely. The school was built in 1926.
Okay. But go ahead and describe the property. It really is fascinating. I've been there a couple times. Actually, I was at the grand opening when President Bush was there. So it's a really cool place. Absolutely. So, like I said, built in 1926, making it about 95 years old. So, with that, it's a 2-story brick structure. When you're walking through the building, as you mentioned, you're seeing 2 signs, white and colored. Hits people differently, but if you can get past that kind of stuff in the sense of not getting stuck right there, honestly, what I share with people, just taking pictures in the building, man, you can be looking at something historic within itself and not even knowing it. So I love people when they ask, much like we had our phone call when I was like that 3-minute spiel or whatever. There's so much in this building in which you will miss in a 3-minute walkthrough or just taking a picture and having no clue what you're taking a picture of. And I say that because down to the floors throughout the building that most people will access, most of the walls throughout the building, the entire outside of the building, every single water fountain minus the pipes themselves, the fire extinguisher ports, some of the door frames, and even the fireplace within the building. All that stuff is original. So you're literally walking through the halls that those students that helped change the face of the country within Monroe School and some of the other schools. There were 4 Black schools within the town. You are literally walking on the exact same grounds in which they walked through.
even down to that field right there. There's a reason that there's no sidewalk through the field, because historically speaking, there was never a sidewalk there. That was their playground. So just accessing things like that is just adds to the story. But as far as the exhibits in which you will see throughout our building, it starts you in a chronological timeline, talks about slavery. You'll talk about some of the Jim Crow laws and how they actually became laws under that 1896 court case, Plessy v. Ferguson. You'll then walk through something called the Hall of Courage, where I was sharing with you about the gentleman yelling certain things at you, seeing the results of and the impacts of Brown v. Board actually winning. People saying segregation now and segregation forever, that being the governor, George Wallace, up in Alabama. All those kind of things in there. You'll speak to the impacts and the 5 different court cases people don't realize. Court case that came out of Washington, D.C., Delaware, Virginia, South Carolina, and Kansas, all having their own impacts and problems there, combined together and then taken up to the Supreme Court in 1954 under Brown v. Board and changed the face of the country forever. And then from there, you also see how the legacy of Brown v. Board continued. As mentioned, it changed schools forever, but that's all that it changed. Segregation was still alive and well, even after Brown v. Board, legally. So you get to see the impacts of that up until the 1964 court case, 1964 Civil Rights Act, excuse me. That was then followed by the Voting Rights of 65, and the ball continued to roll in the changing all the way up to present day knowledge, where you will see certain pictures that will talk about Black Lives Matter. You'll see President Barack Obama and John Lewis, all kind of things and all kind of engaging conversations surrounding the impacts and the legacy of Brown v. Board.
I wish all of our students could see your presentation and certainly visit the historic site. And I hope they'll get that opportunity soon. We don't know what COVID's going to do, but this really is one of those things that you should do. And it's really, gosh, we should be maybe not proud of the history, but we should be proud that we have this asset here to educate people about things that happened in the past and hopefully help us to continue to improve upon those areas that we haven't been very good in the past. But thank you, Ranger Dexter Armstrong, for your time earlier this week, for your time today. Hope we see you again. Maybe we just make you a regular part of JAG K-Day at the Capitol, or maybe at least a visit to the historic site as part of that. So thanks again.
Yes,
we will make sure we get your email also distributed, and then the website address for the historic site. And
yes,
I wouldn't be surprised if you have some folks contacting you about some volunteer opportunities.
Please do, man. This is what we're here for, and this is your park as well. So please utilize us. We're right here in your communities and in your backyard. So please let us know if we can help.
All right, thanks. And with that, hope you all enjoy your coffee.